Greetings and welcome from REO Town Apartments overlooking the glorious Grand River. As you can see, we got a beautiful spectacle here. This is what drove me to the place. And nice little beachfront property here. And even got a little place to sit here. I got this bench, and the bench has a little heart motif there, nice. But you can see there was something a little bit odd here, right? So the bench is not level. So what's going on here? Quite a bit away from level. Well, we're actually losing soil. We're losing organic matter. And there's a saying about soil is the future of civilization. So what's going on with the soil here? So I started taking a look, and obviously there's just not enough of it. As you can see, we lost some trees, got a hole there, and trees that are remaining, clinging on, bless their hearts. You got just a loss of soil, just a complete erosion. So I also noticed there was some vines that were taking over. If you look at this tree, for example, you can see that there's remnants of vines still clinging up the top. Those aren't branches, those are vines. So I started pulling them off, and for about 2 weeks I started developing a rash, which I'm extremely sensitive to poison ivy. It turns out that's what it is. It had completely overtaken the bank. Now fortunately the poison ivy is not virulent. Check out on that cottonwood over there, you can see some thick branches about as thick as my wrist climbing up the side, basically. It's completely overtaken the side, and fortunately, as I learned, it's not virulent before it comes to life in the spring. So I was able to remove a lot of it and use that to start to create erosion breaks. So you can see right here all of these vines that are used. I pulled out some kind of industrial wreckage there, and in the hole I kind of filled it in with this vine that we now know as poison ivy. So all this stuff, that's poison ivy, and it's been through the whole area here. So given that it wasn't really virulent, I was just on a mission to remove it and then kind of solve two problems in one, because it makes the area safe for people to come without getting a nasty rash, and additionally it creates this great rigid cellulose material. We kind of use the plant's strength against it to create erosion breaks that can now be used to rebuild the soil and turn this into a respectable habitat. So the plan here is just to use the poison ivy vines as erosion breaks that we've seen here, with some downed limbs, of which there was a plethora, and then kind of the leaves, kind of rake those up to clean up the area basically, and then a little bit of mulch. You can see a little bit of the black mulch here just to cover up the poison ivy and keep people from getting rashes and keep it from regrowing. So again, a little hole where a tree was, a little bit of area here that we filled in. And as you can see on this side, I filled this all in with poison ivy vines here. So let's take a step back, and you can kind of see the cross section here. So that's all poison ivy with just a thin layer of mulch, and then some kind of driftwood to keep things in. Here's some vines that were directly pulled out, and they grew through these cinder block steps. And you can see kind of deformed and twisted the steps basically. So that's not tree roots that did that. That's actually poison ivy vines that grew through. So I've eradicated that, I believe, completely. Sure, some will come back, but we'll definitely get it when it rears its ugly head. So kind of use that as an erosion break here, starting to rebuild the soil, rebuild the ecosystem. Beautiful thing about mulch, whether it's poison ivy or commercial mulch like the Scots we see here, it's going to break down and it turns into soil, and that's how you build a soil. And as we know, soil is how you build a civilization. So here we can see, kind of built this all up with poison ivy and mulch and some driftwood, and then got a little bulb coming here. Extra prize if anyone can identify this. Someone at Myers, and it was identified as a garden bulb. So, and the mother's even got a little daughter growing out there. So little baby garden bulb, whatever it is. So little life coming back, but most of this hillside was covered with poison ivy. So as you can see here, this is a branch I cut off. I actually broke a brand new garden hoe, Ames brand, normally pretty respectable, but I actually broke the tip right off the hoe trying to cut through this. So that's a poison ivy branch where it came up, and what it did was it grew up this whole thing. You can see these parasitic roots where it penetrates in and takes the sugars from the tree. So it grew all the way up, and you can see the remnants where I couldn't reach and pull the things off. But I got skinny little scientist wrists, but that branch is thicker than my wrist. So it really was, so what it did was it grew all the way up here, parasitizes the tree, grows down, overgrows the complete area. You can see some of it on that, again, industrial wreckage there, a little bit of vines growing up. Totally covered the area. So basically there's nothing else growing here. You can see a few little seeds starting to germinate, and a few of the perennials coming back, but Pretty barren, but it's going to get overtaken, so we're going to get some mulch down, and that'll keep the soil moisture content up, and that'll allow this to be kind of regrown and rehabilitated. And kind of just using the natural lines of the roots. They were exposed. We're just going to try to fill that in with as much organic material as possible. So on that theme, we had this kind of decaying dock here basically, and so filled this in, used what was remnants of some of the wood here, knocked out all the nails, and made a little pathway down here so you can proceed in this direction. So a nice little comfy walk down there. Again, that'll all break down and eventually turn into soil. We have this. I stopped the fill here because there actually is still an active drain barrier, and we see some broken glass. So we'll get to that in a minute. There's a lot of broken glass on the other side here. But just kind of try to shore this up. And again, this will just kind of be an erosion break. This will turn into soil eventually, and we'll have a beautiful beachfront property for the kids to play on. Also kind of clearing out, apparently boaters do use this as a area to take in and put out, whatever put out and take in, whatever boaters do. Not too familiar with that, but you know, this is obviously a beautiful spot, but there's a lot of debris and down trees and things, so I kind of got those pulled out over here, and then a little bit of the dock here. Not sure what we're going to do with that, but you can see there's just a lot of industrial debris, a lot of chunks of concrete. The maintenance guys came through with a chainsaw and topped off the trees that were growing up, so I think they'll resprout. But kind of clearing it out, and there you can see the there is the maintenance guy on the dock of the building itself. So now we'll take a walk down here. Then you can kind of see the scars of the poison ivy branches growing up. They grew down, covered out all the vegetation, and then they actually grew down into the water here. So they're just drinking directly out of the river, covering over the riverbank, giving people rashes, and then parasitizing the trees basically. So really good thing to get rid of those. Use some to fill in here. Again, I stopped filling in there because there's a drain that actually apparently is still alive. We had a storm and some water came out, so I scooped this back out. But again, we'll just kind of let this naturally grow back in. A bit of a nice place for a boat to come or go. And then, oh, here's the broken chunk of drain pipe that was lying there. Again, kind of most of the concrete I found, I just kind of used to shore up the legs here. This dock is eventually rotting, and it'll turn to soil eventually, but till then, it's a nice kind of stepping stone area to get down to the beachfront property here. So here's kind of a nice section. This was all, it was just stepped directly down to the beach, and so I built this up with driftwood, and then you can see kind of the cross section here. Poison ivy vines, a few of these vines from this tree. Now this is a maple. This was down, I can tell you that, because I pruned it a little bit, and it started just gushing water out of here, basically just almost spurting water basically. So that's that sap, maple syrup coming out. The syrup's actually cooked down, but sugar rich liquid, and it just spewed it out basically. So this is a maple, and obviously it was down due to this erosion problem. So what I've tried to do is shore it up. Again, we've got poison ivy, we've got some limbs I pruned off to try to direct the growth to these two branches here, and then you can see a little bit of straw there. This is all natural. Everything here used to rebuild this bank to control the erosion is almost completely poison ivy. A little bit of these down branches mixed in, and then 2 bales of straw that I used from Andy T's, and that was to kind of create a little fill here for a down ramp so you can walk over, and then we're going to fill in. This will be all soil. This will be a nice maple here, and not